Thank you. Welcome. All right, so when I was writing this talk a few years ago, I had somebody ask me, well, what do you know about leadership? And I said, well, I've been working since I was, anybody work for the IRS in here? No? Okay, I've been working since I was 14. And I've had bosses all my life. I have a boss now. Actually, I have two bosses. It's kind of like Office Space. And I've had some really good bosses, and I've had some really crappy bosses. And I've been a boss through my life. I've been a crappy boss, and I like to think that now I'm a good boss. So this is really, the subtitle could be Story Time with Phil, but it's the stuff that I've learned over the years that has really changed my life and how I approach leadership, not just from an HR standpoint, but from a technology leadership as well. Because we all have an opportunity to lead, even if you're not called a manager, right? You can lead your team, you can lead people around you. So a little bit about me, if you don't know who I am the director of consulting for the company that I work for. I do consulting, I still sling code, I'm an Agile coach, I'm an author, and I do a lot of teaching as well. So let's get right into it. What makes a leader? And the thing that I hear all the time is, wow, they're a natural born leader. No, nobody is born a natural born leader. When you are born, you eat, sleep, and poop. Right? There's no leadership involved in that, right? And it's not magical. This is appropriate for where we are right now, but nobody's going to show up on your doorstep on your 11th birthday and say, you're a leader, right? And it's not easy. And it's not always obvious. So if you're not familiar with Lord of the Rings, what are you doing here? No, I'm kidding. But if you're not familiar with Lord of the Rings, but if you are, who's the leader of the Fellowship of the Ring? Anyone? Who thinks Gandalf? A few people? Because he's old and gray? He's a consultant. So a lot of people think Gandalf's the leader because he's old and gray, right? Because that person's been here for 40 years. But I think he's done the same job 40 times over, right? 1 year of experience repeated 40 times doesn't make you a leader. And the other problem with Gandalf is every time the going gets tough, what's happened? He's stuck on top of Isengard, has to get rescued by a butterfly. He falls into a pit fighting the Balrog, right? He's never around when they need him. And when he comes back, he's like, I don't know who you guys are, right? It's Frodo. The entire team is rallied around him. He has the vision. He has the mission. He's truly the leader, and he's the shortest of the group. So what are some of the essentials to being a good leader? And this isn't just about leadership. I spent 15 years as a firefighter paramedic, and when the guys and gals on the front line would get promoted, we called it molting. Because we had a dark blue shirt, they got a light blue shirt. The more bugles you got, the wider your uniform got. And I remember one guy got promoted to lieutenant. What he didn't know is we lobbied for him to get promoted to get him out of the truck. But as soon as he became lieutenant, he expected respect. But he didn't give any. If you don't give respect out, you're not going to get any back. So you have to give it to get it. You need to be a mentor. And there are mentorship programs that you can get into. You can make it official. I like making it unofficial. We bring in a lot of change-a-lifers. People who go through boot camps, have prior careers, come over to tech. I love hiring them because they're eager. They want to learn. But they're kind of clueless. Not in a bad way. When it comes to tech, right? So we need to mentor them. But more important to being a mentor, to become a good leader, you have to have a mentor. I have several mentors in my life. Some of them don't even know they're my mentor. Right? It doesn't have to be an official thing. But there are speakers that I will go watch speak if they were talking about cat litter. Because they are such good at presenting their message. Such good at presenting. And I just played word crimes. Oh my. So good. But probably the most important thing of all is be proactive. If you get one thing from this talk, this is what I want you to get. The best boss I ever had, a guy by the name of Chris Sells. You might have heard of him. We were all remote. I was running a development team for a product company, and we were all remote, and we'd have a phone call every week. And every time we started that call, he would say, "Phil, what can I do for you today?" I mean, he might have an agenda, but the first thing he always said was, "What can I do for you today?" And the more I think about it, I have to break down the power of that statement. There are so many times in life where we're irritated by something. Might be your partner, might be a colleague, might be your boss. But we don't want to bring it up because we don't know how to broach the subject. We don't want to sound whiny. And these things fester. And they become gangrenous. And then people quit. I remember years ago, I was talking to somebody who quit, and I wasn't their boss. And I said, "Why did you quit?" "Well, 2 years ago, somebody hacked them off, and they kept it inside." But if you start with, "What can I do for you today?" those little things, you have an opportunity to present them and to hear them. The worst thing you can do is say, "I have an open door policy." Because if you walk into that boss's office, everybody's going, why is he going into Phil's office? What's going on? And if you close the door behind you, ooh, right? The gossip is going. But be proactive. And time box everything. Right? As Brian said, I do a lot of stuff in the Agile space. I'm big into time box. We time box our work. But sometimes we forget to time box meetings. You ever been in a meeting, 11 o'clock, maybe it's a keynote, and we're like, we're not going to finish on time, and we're not going to get done what we need to get done. So let's order in lunch, and we'll continue meeting. You guys ever done that? You ever solve anything except get a free lunch? No. The other thing, too, is from a disciplinary standpoint. My wife, love her, she's a talker. I remember when the kids were little, she would get on them about something they did, and she's getting on them and getting on them and getting on them. Finally, I'm like, I'm done hearing it. Can we stop? Control the time. Aw. Do you know what a hippo is? Other than a big animal that's cute when they're tiny? It's the highest paid person's opinion. And it can derail a project or a team faster than anything else. There was some friction on my team right before Thanksgiving. We were just crazy deadlines. Everybody was putting in extra effort. Now, I don't make anybody work overtime. But people were putting in extra hours. And there was friction. So I called them. We had one conference room. We all sit in a big open area. And I called them into the conference room, and I said, here's the deal, guys. I got good news, and I have a request. I said, the good news is I'm buying you guys lunch on Wednesday. You can take the afternoon off. Bad news is I'm walking out of this door, and I'm closing it behind me, and you can't leave until you figure out what this issue is that you have, or Frank eats you. Frank eats a lot. Because I knew that if I got involved, it's dad, right? And I'm making arbitrary rules. So I excused myself because I was the boss and let the team handle it. Nothing can derail a productive meeting than an executive getting involved. And if you're an executive, I apologize. Not really. Right? Because at some point in time, we have to have that openness that people can only feel if the boss isn't around. Let's talk about change. We're not accountants. If we were, we would be at a conference learning the new features in Excel. But accounting hasn't changed. but our technology and the paradigms and what we're building is constantly changing. Change is going to happen, whether you want it to or not. And what we need to do is make sure we don't underestimate the rate of change. Let me know who this is? Gordon Moore, co-founder of Intel. And what did he say? What's he known for other than Intel? Moore's Law, right? Which was kind of misquoted, but essentially the number of transistors doubles every 2 years. And think about how our industry, right? That was true. There was a time where we could make things faster by throwing hardware at it. Then we got to the part where processors were getting so fast that they were burning holes in the bottom of the machines. So we went to multiple cores. And if you didn't change how you wrote software, your software failed. IoT, AI, all these things are constantly changing. I'm preaching to the choir. You guys are here taking a week off from work in this horrible place called Orlando. But to learn, right? So you guys are certainly embracing that and understanding the amount of change. Because we have to embrace it. I'm not that old. I'm close, but I'm not that old. But how many of you remember building this type of stuff, right? Oracle Forms, Power Builder, VB6. And then IT revolted, got tired of SneakerNet and DLL hell, and said, you know what? This is better. And it was for IT, right? But it was horrible for our users. What's probably the biggest change that hit us? It's a smartphone. Revolutionized how we had to think about software. And things are happening all the time. And to that end, we can't solve the problems. Let me just read it because it's such a great quote. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And that's such a brilliant quote because so many times we just do the same thing over and over again. My brother, I have three, but one of them is a very talented musician, and he was music director for his church. And a few years ago, like when he started there, in the spring they said, okay, we're going to go to summer hours. And he lives in upstate New York. He's got a big boat. He goes out to Lake George. And he said, oh, that's awesome, summer hours. I get more time on the lake. They said, yeah, instead of 9 o'clock, we're going to start at 8:45. What? Why are we doing that? Well, it's summer hours. But why? Well, we've always done it. But why? Turns out 42 years ago, in the spring, their pastor retired. They found a guy in the next town over who would cover their church service, but he said, can you start 15 minutes early so I can get to my church on time? Guess what happened in the fall? They found a full-time pastor. They went back to 9 o'clock. For 42 years, that became summer hours because nobody thought differently, right? And we need to facilitate change. Anybody recognize her? Marie Curie, first woman to win a Nobel Prize. First woman to win in 2 different categories, physics and chemistry. Unfortunately, didn't understand the effects of radiation, and we lost her at a fairly young age. But probably the biggest change that she made was she became a fully tenured professor at the University of Paris, where most women weren't even allowed in, right? She made that change happen. Going to modern times, I love this story. Captain David Marquette, commander, I think is how he retired, turned the ship around, which is ironic because he's a submariner and it's really a boat. But here's the deal, right? So graduate of Naval Academy with honors, was going to get this new sub that they were building, hadn't been built yet, spent the last 2 years of his naval career studying this new sub. Right before he gets his sub, the captain of McHale's Navy says, I'm out. drops the mic. It's the worst boat in the fleet, has failed every inspection, so bad they were going to pull the missiles off of it. And this is his new command. And he gets there on day one and he says, well, let's take it out to sea, see what she can do. So he turns to his XO and he says, ahead 3/4, ahead 3/4 aye, ahead 3/4, ahead 3/4, ahead 3/4 aye. Gets down to the engineer and the engineer goes, we ain't got a 3/4. We don't have 3/4. We don't have 3/4 aye. We don't have 3/4. All the way back up to the captain. And he goes, did you know this? And the XO says, yes. But you still relayed it. Well, that's how the Navy works. You give me a command, I do it. And he said, from that moment on, I never gave another order. I told him my goal. I need to be at the south end of the Laurentian Abyss in 72 hours. Get me there. Didn't tell him how. Think about this in tech. How many times have you told your DBA how to build a database? Don't answer that. Or how many times has somebody told you how to do your job? No, you know how to do it. 11 of his officers became captains. Unheard of. Totally changed the world in the Navy. That being said, we have to manage change. It's often said that you can't change a person, group, or org more than 10% at a time. I know this is true because when my wife and I got married, she thought she could change me. And that first year, she tried really hard. And it was not a good year for us. We've been married 15 years since then. I think she saw this talk and said, if I just do 10% at a time. And one day I woke up and I've changed 150%. What the hell happened? I'm wearing khakis. Right? 15 years ago, I'd be up here in flip-flops and shorts. I'm in Florida. So we need to think about how we can introduce change slowly and surely. How do we get better? And this is not just about leadership, but this is to get better at how we do what we do. One of my favorite mantras is fail fast, succeed faster. Why is Heinz 57 called Heinz 57? Yeah, first 56 tasted like crap. Sorry, I'm getting recorded. First 56 tasted horrible. Don't drag out your attempts. But every time you fail, and Edison said this as well, every time my light bulb didn't work, I learned something. You try something with your team, it goes horribly wrong. Don't do that, right? Hey, Doc, it hurts when I walk this way. Well, stop walking that way. Do this in software. Do this with your people, right? Try things, but time box them. See how the TARDIS is coming back? And practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Actually, I was giving this talk somewhere, and there's somebody who I guess lives right down the street from Carnegie Hall, and he goes, oh, it's right down there. But there are things I still have to work on. There are things I practice. I mean, I'm an old dog. I'm still learning new tricks. Doesn't matter how good you are, you have to keep working it. And I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't hear, and I didn't come up with it. Practice what you're good at. Become excellent at what you're good at. If you practice what you're bad at, you'll be mediocre across the board. Practice what you're good at to become excellent. Augment what you're bad with other people. Right? Build that successful team around you. And you can only do that by expanding your boundaries. I'm really dating myself here. That is the cast of 9 to 5. So many people, and again, I'm preaching to the choir, but so many people in this industry call them dark matter developers. They're like, oh, it's 5 o'clock. Shut down the computer. Don't think about tech again until tomorrow morning. These are people who are still doing COBOL. I'm not knocking COBOL. They're probably making good money, right? But these are people who aren't growing. These are the people who look like Gandalf and can't get much past hello world. How many of you go to user groups in your area? Yeah. There's other things you can do besides the big conferences. Now, it's great that you're here, but once a year isn't enough. If you want to become better at presenting, and I'm not talking about presenting on a stage like this, because we always have to present in what we do. Especially if you're the leader, right? You have to speak for the team. Present what your team wants. Start a little internal Toastmasters. What I did, I didn't call it that. I said, we're going to do lunch and learn. Every Thursday, over lunch, we do a lunch and learn. Have a projector, and somebody shows what they've been working on. No pressure. Or if they've got a new framework that they want to show, or an opportunity for people to show things. Let me do this. I know it's been a long day and a long week, so I'm going to have you, we're halfway through. Everybody stand up. Get the blood moving a little bit. Here's what I want you to do. If your birth date, the date of the month, is an even numbered date, you should stand with your hands together. And if it's odd, stand with your hands apart. Hold on. All right, thank you for the standing ovation. You're not going to remember anything from the keynote, but you're going to remember that. Let's get into some of the personal traits that I have found, and some of these I'm still working on. This one I have to constantly practice. Always listen first. Actively listen, whatever you want to call it. So many times, somebody will come to me with a question, and I am answering the question in my head before they finish asking it. I'm an engineer, right? That's what I do. I solve problems. The problem with that is I don't hear the end of the question, which could be a dog leg left. And now I'm answering the wrong question. One of the techniques that they talk to you about in these communication seminars is repeat the question back. I will tell you that gets annoying. But if it's what you have to do to build that skill, build that skill. I have to force myself not to answer the question or think about answering the question until I hear the entire question. Be honest. This was a sign outside of a bar in Nashville. And I looked at it and I said, I got to take a picture of this. If I choose to walk into this bar, there's not a darn thing I can complain about. They've got that covered. Historically, in this business, we've been horrible about being honest. How's everything going? Oh, it's fine. You can make the date? Yes, we're going to make the date. There's no way we're going to make the date. Yes, we're going to make the date. And then what happens in the last week? Oh, we need to slip the schedule. Or we need to add more resources. Right? You ever been in a project where, hey, if we add 20 more people right now, we can get this done? But what if in the beginning of that, long before the end, you realize there was a problem and you go, hey guys, I think we have an issue. There have been so many times I've gone to the customer early and I said, I don't think we can get this done in the time that you want to get it done. You know what they've said to me almost every time? Well, can we do it differently? Yeah, let's talk. Let's collaborate. Let's negotiate. But you got to be honest up front. And you have to have full disclosure as much as you can. If you're in an HR position, you can't tell everybody each other's salaries. So let's do a little vote here. And we're going to do Lord of the Rings versus the Wizard of Oz. Well, you can see where my vote is. All right, Lord of the Rings? Wizard of Oz? Yeah, it always wins. All right, so here's the problem. It's the final scene, right? Frodo has his finger bitten off. The ring's fallen into Mount Doom. They've saved Middle-earth. Frodo and Sam are sitting on this outcropping of rock, and there's lava flowing everywhere. They're hugging it out because they're going to die. And a giant eagle picks them up and plops them at the feet of Gandalf and the rest of the surviving party. And they're all high fives and happy. The heck with that. If I was Frodo, I'd go up to Gandalf. I'd kick him in the shin. You had eagles? You could have picked me up in the Shire. We could have flown over to Mount Doom, dropped the ring in from 10,000 feet, and been back in time for second breakfast. I actually worked with a customer doing organizational change where the people were really unhappy, and they're like, well, we're trying to figure out why the people are unhappy, and the skip level brought me in. Turns out middle management, their bonus was tied to how much money they had left in their budget at the end of the year. Did they tell their people they had training dollars available? No, because that got in the way of them and their boat. I've had people that I've worked with in the past who wouldn't tell customers that that's really hard to do it that way. Right? Or they're working extra hours and not billing. Honesty, disclosure. And equally important is clarity. I've had this slide in my decks for 10 years. To this day, I can't tell you when you can park where. And I'd love to see the traffic statistics for that street when people are trying to read that and drive and park. It's bad. They're probably texting at the same time. Can an 8-year-old understand it? Not that you're talking down to people, but sometimes we talk to impress people, and we have to watch out for that. I'm guilty of that, right? I've got 6 books. One of them's a bestseller. I've got a bunch of LinkedIn learning courses. I do talks all over the world. Sometimes I come across like I shouldn't. Sometimes I talk, like, especially my change of lifers, I'll explain the concept to them. They're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm the boss, so they're afraid to tell me that, right? Because the whole hippo thing. Get everybody on the same page. I know we've used this picture's been around for a long time. Something that I never allow people to do is do anything by themselves. If we're going to go talk to the customer, like if our product owner is going to go talk to the customer, they're taking some of the rest of the team with them. The problem with the product owner talking to the stakeholders and the customers and then bringing that back, how is that different than waterfall? Right? Because then they're regurgitating what they thought they heard, and now we got the telephone line, the telephone game all over again. So we do things as a group, as a pack, and it keeps us on the same page. And you know what? Sometimes you got to take your team out for drinks. Give them a tab. Maybe go away. Get them on the same page. What I've told my team, time and time again, is the team has the right to make any and every decision. I have veto power. I've used it once because they were bringing in some whacked out framework that I didn't think was going to survive. But other than that, they brought in some really good ideas together as a team because they were on the same page. We don't have any cubes. We have just regular tables in a big square and we all sit around each other. So yes, you can see somebody picking their nose. We have huddle rooms for that, please. Along those lines, I want you to be agile in your communications. I love meeting without tables. But more importantly, understand how everybody communicates. Just checking the time. How many of you have walked down the hall in your office and you said, "Hi, Jim, how are you?" And you immediately facepalm because you know Jim now is going to have you cornered for 45 minutes. You guys know that person? If you don't know that person, it's probably you, so just think about that. We spend so much time explaining, but what I want everybody to do in communication is always give the TLDR version first. One of the worst things you can do is say it's fine. When I started traveling a bunch 20 years ago, call my wife, "Hey, how was your day?" Now she is if you've ever done the DISC, she's a high S and a high C, steady and conscientious. So how was your day gets answered with, in 1980, all the way up. And so what do? Oh, yeah, sure, yeah, wow, hoping to time those right, which I never did. I am a high D and a high I. That's, it's not dominating, but that's what I call it, and influence. So you're going to like me, damn it. And she'd ask me how the conference is going. I said, "It's fine." You know what she would say to me? "Why aren't you talking to me?" Question asked, question answered. But think about that. You're walking down the hall and somebody says, "Hey, how's the project going?" "It's fine." We're not going to be able to deliver on time. I don't trust them. Start with the TLDR. How's the project going? You know what? We're on schedule. We're making good progress. Everything's copacetic. How's the project going? Oh, we hit some snags. We're working through them. We don't think it's going to affect anything. We're still going to meet the sprint goal, right? Then if they want more details, give it to them. Engage, right? If you are truly a manager and you spend all your time in your office, I don't know how to say this without being harsh. You're a failure. Because you have no idea what your team's doing. Sit with them. I know some of you have worked really hard to get that office. You can keep your nameplate on the door. But every now and then, pull your laptop out and just sit with the team. Find out about their kids, their dogs, their likes. I got two of the guys on my team that are big tabletop gamers. I'm in the video games. I don't understand one word of what they're saying. But I'm trying to learn something about it so I can at least relate. Right? It's not just about the work. So how do we lead teams? You got to understand your team. If this is my team and a big piece of kryptonite is stuck in the hallway, am I going to ask Superman to move it? So I know this is a stretch goal for you, Superman. Likewise, if we're going to have a picnic and it's really sunny, am I going to ask Wonder Woman to go move her plane over here to park it so we can have shade? If you don't know, Wonder Woman's jet is invisible. Everybody on your team has something they're really good at. They're not really good at everything. Leverage that. But you know what you can do? You can take that person who's really good at something and that person who's not really good at something and have them pair. So that the two people aren't floundering and the one person is leveling up. But you have to know your team. You also have to know not only their strengths, but their likes. One of the guys on my team came from a database background. We had an opportunity with a customer. We had to do a bunch of SSIS. I immediately thought of him. Of course, I didn't ask him if he wanted to do it. Oops. There was a reason he's not doing straight database stuff anymore. He didn't like it. And now I'm asking him to go back in there because I didn't know my team as well as I should, as well as I thought I did. And in that sense, you need to manage down. So many of us are trained to manage up, right? I need to make my boss look good, that's going to make me look good. Screw that. If your team is rocking, you're going to look good. The company I work for, there's a reason it's not on my slides. They don't support me in this. They don't support my speaking or anything. They want to leverage it, but they don't want to support it, so I don't give them any advertising. Matter of fact, they don't believe that they should have any management except for the two of them, the two owners. I stopped long ago trying to make them look good. I spend my time building my team, making them the best they can be. We moved offices. I got my new business cards with the new logo. My title used to be principal consultant. It's still my official title. You know what title they put on my card? Director of Microsoft Consulting Services. They did this. The people who don't want to have bosses. It's because my team rocks. It's not because of me. And they rock because I get rid of their roadblocks. Hey, we're having a real hard time getting this done. All right, I'm going to do whatever I can to get that fixed. If you can get rid of their roadblocks so they can just work, and what some of those roadblocks are political, right? There are people that we have to interface, whether they're internal or external, that are just flat out jerks. Fact of life. I take that on. I deal with the politics. I don't enjoy it. But it gets in their way of getting their job done. I missed an opportunity in a meeting a couple weeks ago. I'm taking the rest of December off because I have a bunch of vacation I have to use. And so I had a meeting with my customer and I said, Brian's my XO. He's in charge in my absence. And the particular jerk at the customer who we don't normally have to deal with says, well, how are we going to know that they're doing the right thing when you're gone? In front of my team. And I was so flabbergasted that it was a failure on my part, because what I should have done at that very moment said, I completely trust my team. And I do. They don't really need me. But I was so shocked that this customer said those words out loud that I did one of those. And later I took my team back and I apologized. I said that was a miss on my part. I wasn't removing the roadblock because you guys are all pissed off, I can tell. That was on me, my fault. I talked about Brian, the guy who's my XO. He really wants to be a leader, and he's got the potential. I talked about mentorship. Now I'm going to talk about coaching. Coaching is different. Coaching is very specific. Right? We have hitting coaches. We have pitching coaches. But then a lot of the professional sports teams are getting mentors to teach these college grads how to deal with the millions of dollars. So mentorship is more open-ended. Coaching is a specific skill. Brian wants to be a leader. I'm coaching him how to be a leader. I have my guys who are good at, like Frank, who's good at database, didn't want to do the SSIS project. He coached one of my other guys. They're pairing on it so that I have more than one person who can do that, and I've raised the bust factor to 2. You guys remember the bust factor, right? The number of people on your team that can hit by a bus before it fails. So coach, encourage. My wife's grandmother was a Rosie Riveter, and I was fascinated by this. I talked to her about it when she was still alive, and I said, tell me how that was like, what that was like. She said she grew up in a large Catholic family where their expectation was she would get married and raise kids. World War II came. Vast majority of the men went off to fight. They needed to have women to fill in. And she said, I didn't think I was capable of doing it. This campaign was evidently extremely successful. I wasn't alive then, so I can't tell firsthand, but this is from talking to my grandmother-in-law. And she said, we got so much encouragement that we did it. And the history books will show that they did it better than most of the men. But they had to be encouraged to do it. If you have people on your team, people in your group who want to learn something new, hey, I want to try this in ASP.NET Core. Spike it out. Go for it. But encouragement means nothing if you don't enable them to do that. Right? Yeah, spike it out. But by the way, you still have to bill 40 hours on this other stuff. That doesn't work. I let my team do skunkworks projects. I struck a deal with senior management that they can bill 4 hours a week back to the company to try new stuff. It was a fight. But it enables them to learn. And what I found is learning begets learning. 2 of the guys on my team only wanted on-the-job training, and I considered letting them go. I introduced this policy. They're taking this, hey, I'm having fun doing this, and they're doing it nights and weekends. Because I enabled it. George Washington, after the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, they were trying to figure out this new government. And there was a lot of people, I'm not sure what the polls said, but they're all fake anyway. There was a lot of people that wanted him to become king, president for life. And he could have stepped into that role. But he was wise and smart, and frankly, I think he was just tired. And he said, "Now I'll do this thing you call president for 2 terms, and then I'm out." When I graduated from college, I went to a fairly highly ranked engineering school with a computer science degree. My first job out of college, because I had a college degree, I was made manager of the department. And I had 5 mainframe programmers working for me. And I look back at that time that I spent there, and I am surprised it took them a year to fire me. Because I was a jerk. I was the hotshot college grad. Only 3 schools in the entire United States had computer science degrees that were engineering degrees. Everything else back then were in the business school. So I walked on water. My poop didn't stink. And I came in, and I'm going to lead these guys because I spent a lot of money at college. And I was a complete abject failure. And I was stubborn, so I didn't really learn from it then, because you know how you are in your 20s, right? When we get these opportunities to be a tech lead or a manager, one of the things that I keep telling people is, now that I'm older and a little bit wiser, I still have a long way to go. What are all these things I said? It's not about you. It's about the team. It's about having that common goal, being on the same page, working together. The owners actually came to me about 6 months ago. This is hysterical. And they said, we just want to talk to you about what you've built here. So all 6 of my people were butts in seats out in different customers. And I knew all of them were going to quit. They were actively searching because they were tired of being a contractor. And I said, well, I've got this customer. They want us to do a project. I've got a lot of experience in manufacturing. It's a machine shop. It's not a button seat, but I need to pull these people out of these other customer areas. And slowly but surely, I got all of them on my team. And they finally acknowledged it's my team. And then right before I got the new business card, the owners came and they sat down and they said, we're really impressed with what you built. And frankly, we're surprised because we all thought they hated you. What? So I talked to them all individually, right? And I say, guys, if you hate me, let me know, right? I want to be transparent here. And they're like, no, we never said that. We didn't want to have a boss. Oh, okay. Do you feel like you have a boss now? And the most important, and this is little, I guess, what do you call it, a humble brag, I guess? Each of them said, no, we feel like we have a leader and not a boss. And a little jerk into my eye. That's what I'm trying for, right? Because anybody can get that HR authority and swing it around. I don't have any HR authority, but they treat me like I do. And that's because I've had 30 years of failures, failing fast, building up to this, right? And the last thing, and lunch is coming up, so I rushed the beginning. There were more stories I could have told, but we'll get you to lunch early. I don't know if you know who that is. It's Colonel Hal Moore. He founded Air Cav, and I have not had the honor of serving in the armed forces. I did spend time as a firefighter paramedic, which is completely different. And I'm not comparing what we do in any way, shape, or form to the brave men and women of the armed forces. I'm not making that comparison. But this quote, I just can't get past. When they were first going into battle, let us understand the situation we're going into, battle against a tough and determined enemy. This I swear. When we go into battle, I will be the first one to step foot on the field, and I will be the last to step off it. I think back to a deploy that we did for a particular grocery store chain that might be based where I live and is really big, where my manager, the deploy did not go well. This was a whole bunch of years ago. Things were failing, and we all spent 36 hours in the team room. You can imagine the smell. My immediate manager was nowhere to be found, right? It's a weekend. He was a vapor trail. My skip level, the director of engineering, stayed there the entire time. She was running and getting food. She had nothing to do. I mean, obviously, we were in her division, so the release going well would help her. She ran and got clothes, got deodorant. That might have been for her benefit as well, but she was there the whole time. My manager wasn't, right? Think of Office Space. I'm gonna need you to work overtime this weekend and get those TPS reports while the boss is nowhere to be seen. I have told my guys time and time again that if you have to stay late because there's a problem, I'm staying late with you. Because that's what people did for me in the past, and it has a profound impact on the team mentality. Don't ask your people to do something you wouldn't be willing to do yourself. We got a huge project come up, and unfortunately the source code's in VB6. Lots of groans, right? The new stuff's can be in ASP.NET on the core, but the old stuff's in VB6. Roll it up my sleeves. Let's do it together, right? I'm helping them, and I'm doing this current one, not in December because I'm taking it off, but all last month we were going through VB6 code together. Probably not the best use of my time, but it's what the team needed. And it's painful, but it would be painful for them too. I did finish a little early, yes, because I know that lunch is between the end of this, right, and me, so I want to make sure you get to lunch on time. But thank you very much for coming. I hope you got something out of this, at least some tidbits to take back. I will be around the rest of the week. If you have questions, please let me know. Thank you very much for listening.